Dozens of people walked past him. Each carried their own rainy evening in haste and worries. For most, he was nothing more than part of the background, a figure they were used to. But sometimes, someone slowed their pace, stopped, and then the beggar's eyes came alive. He wasn't just waiting for a coin, he was waiting for a meeting. That evening, a woman approached him, under an umbrella, in a strict coat, with a business bag. Her heels tapped on the wet asphalt, and each sound echoed in his chest like a bell. She pulled out her wallet. Coins clinked against the plastic cup. But when her fingers came close, he lightly touched her hand, just for a moment. And that was enough. He saw her in a way no one else could. Behind the cold exterior lay a heavy burden. Scenes flashed before his eyes. Her voice, once breaking into a scream. The face of a child burying into a pillow in tears. A man closing the door behind him as he walked into the night. She stood before him, strong and confident on the outside, but inside consumed by guilt. "You blame yourself too often," he said quietly. "But it's not always your fault." The woman flinched, her gaze darting sharply to him. She hadn't expected to hear her secret words spoken aloud by a vagabond. "What did you say?" Her voice was muffled, almost fearful. The beggar raised his head, and in his eyes reflected the rain and dim streetlights. "You carry pain inside you," he continued, "the kind that doesn't let go day or night. You blame yourself for destroying the family, but were you the only one who closed that door?" The woman recoiled as if the words had burned her. She gripped the umbrella so tightly, her knuckles turned white. No one had ever spoken this aloud to her. No one had seen her inner nightmare. And yet this stranger, sitting on the wet pavement, had read her secret with a single touch. She froze. She wanted to leave, but her feet seemed rooted to the ground. Her heart beat too loudly, and she felt as though the whole world could hear its pounding. "How do you know?" she asked, her voice a mixture of fear and despair. The beggar smiled faintly at the corner of his lips. "I see what is hidden deep inside. I see what presses on you harder than any rain." The woman closed her eyes, trying to gather herself. In her mind's eye, the scene flared again. Children's tears, loud quarrels, silence after the slammed door. She feared it would haunt her forever. And then, for the first time in her life, a stranger told her, "It wasn't only your fault." She took a deep breath, as if about to dive into cold water. "You don't know me," she whispered, but her words sounded empty, uncertain. The beggar nodded quietly. "I don't need to. Everything you need, you already carry in your heart." The woman lowered her umbrella, letting raindrops fall on her hair and shoulders. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to just stand in the rain, not caring about appearances. "I yelled at him," she blurted out, "at my son. Too often. I thought I was raising him, but in reality, I was breaking him." Her voice trembled and tears flickered in her eyes. The beggar remained silent. Sometimes silence is stronger than words. She stepped closer. "If you can see everything like this, tell me, can it be fixed?" The beggar lowered his gaze to his palms, wet and cracked from the cold. "No one can rewrite the past, but you can give it a different continuation. You fear your son will never forgive you, but you haven't even tried to truly ask for forgiveness. You've always justified yourself, argued, blamed yourself and others, but you never opened your heart to him." The woman listened, holding her breath. His words cut like a knife, yet at the same time, lit a tiny spark of hope. "I thought he'd get used to it, that it was the way it had to be," she went on. "And then one day he stopped talking to me. He shut himself off. I'd come home, he'd sit in his room, silent. And the more I tried to reach him, the higher the wall between us grew." Her voice broke. "And my husband left. He said he was tired, that I had ruined everything myself." The beggar listened to her without looking away. "You didn't ruin it," he finally said. "You were wounded too. You were broken once yourself. You just didn't notice how the pain carried on." The woman sobbed, covering her mouth with her hand. He was saying what she had never dared to admit. "But I've lost him," she whispered. The beggar raised his eyes, and in them the rainy city was reflected. You can only lose someone if you stop walking toward them. But you're still here, and so is he. That means the road between you hasn't vanished. It's overgrown with thorns, but if you're willing, you can clear it." The woman sobbed, clutching the strap of her bag. For the first time in many years, something like faith flickered in her heart. But fear was stronger. "And what if he hates me?" The beggar smiled gently. "Then all the more reason to go to him. Hatred is also a cry for love. Indifference, that is the true abyss." The woman closed her eyes, and from the depths of memory surfaced moments she had long tried to forget. Arguments, harsh words, slamming doors, and her son's gaze, heavy, silent, full of resentment. She feared that look more than any words. What if it's too late? Her voice shook, as if the very street trembled with tension. The beggar sighed softly. "It will be too late only when both of you stop waiting for each other. But as long as you're standing here and crying, it's not yet." Those words struck at the core. Her shoulders lowered, but in her heart, something new arose, the desire to try. She crouched down beside him, looking at the homeless man for the first time truly. In his face there was something elusive, the weariness of 1,000 lives, and a wisdom you won't find in books. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. The beggar smiled faintly. "Because everyone carries their wounds, and if I can ease someone else's even a little, then this day wasn't lived in vain." The woman fell silent. No one had ever spoken to her like this. She, so used to offices, negotiations, to people who always wanted something in return, and here was a man who had nothing, yet still gave. She wanted to ask something more, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she pulled out her phone. On the screen flashed her son's name. She stared at it for a long time, unable to press call. "I can't," she whispered. The beggar gently touched her hand. "You can. Fear will always be near. But if you take a step, fear will stay behind. If you don't, it will become your shadow forever." The woman pressed the phone to her chest. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed the whole city could hear it. She stood up as if preparing for the hardest road of her life. She took a breath. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the call button. The ringing seemed endless, and then a familiar voice. "Hello?" It was quiet, uncertain, but enough to break the walls. Her knees buckled, and she nearly dropped the phone. "Son, it's me. I want to talk." Silence hung on the other end, long, heavy. The woman was ready to burst into tears right there on the—
"What do you want?" Her son's voice sounded curt, almost harsh. The woman flinched. She had expected coldness, but hearing it still hurt. I just want to talk. Not like before, no arguments, just to hear you." A pause followed on the line. Through the noise of rain, she could hear his breathing. Inside, she clenched. If he hung up now, everything would be over. She looked at the beggar, as if searching for strength in his eyes. He gave a barely noticeable nod, as if confirming, "Hold on." "You always want to talk when it's convenient for you," said the son. His words cut deep, but there was truth in them. The woman closed her eyes. "You're right. Too often I thought only of myself. I yelled because I was afraid of losing control, afraid you'd grow up wrong. But in the end, I lost you." Her voice trembled and tears flowed freely, mixing with the rain. On the other end, there was silence. He hadn't expected to hear an admission, not excuses, not new reproaches, but honest words. "Why are you saying this now?" asked her son. And in his voice, for the first time, there was no anger, but weariness. The woman gripped the phone tighter. "Because today I realized if I don't say it, I might lose the chance forever. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just want you to know I won't hide behind shouting anymore. I'm ready to listen." Her voice sounded sincere, and even the noise of rain couldn't drown out that truth. The beggar was silent, but his eyes glowed with quiet approval. On the other end came a breath. "Maybe I'll try, but I don't promise." The woman pressed her hand to her chest, as if holding in a heart ready to burst out. "That's enough. Just try," she whispered. And for the first time in many years, she felt a fragile thread stretch between them again. It wasn't strong, but it was real. When the call ended, the woman stood still, as if afraid to scare off the fragile feeling. The beggar looked at her. "Now, everything depends on you. You open the door, now you must take a step inside." The woman was still standing in the rain, staring at the empty street, and felt that the world had changed, if only for a moment. The beggar quietly said, "Every step you take leaves a mark. Don't fear mistakes, fear indifference." She nodded, but doubt lingered in her eyes. "And what if I make the same mistake again?" she asked. He glanced at the cup of coins before him, at the wet asphalt, and smiled faintly. "Mistakes are inevitable, but if you want to fix something important, you have to act, not wait for the perfect moment." She fell silent. Old fears spun in her head. What if her son turned away? What if it was all in vain? What if time was already lost forever? The beggar noticed this moment of hesitation. He stepped closer, lightly touching her shoulder. "Your fear is also a part of you. Don't run from it. Look it in the eyes." The woman sighed deeply and, for the first time, felt that she was not alone. Her hands trembled, but inside appeared something new, the strength to act even despite fear. The beggar fell silent. He rarely shared about himself, but today something pushed him to reveal a small piece of his own secret. "You know," he said, "I too once made mistakes I regret, but I realized, if I can help even one person, then my path was not in vain." The woman looked at him with surprise. Her expectations crumbled. This homeless man seemed to carry more humanity than anyone she had ever known. You're not an ordinary beggar," she said softly. He only nodded, his eyes shining with a strange calm. The woman realized that talking to him had changed her. He didn't give ready-made solutions, didn't point the way. He only showed where the light was hiding, where the pain was, and how one might begin to move. She felt that she could call her son again, send a message, or simply come to him. The main thing was to act. She looked into his eyes and quietly said, "Thank you." The beggar smiled slightly. "Not me," he said, "yourself." She didn't understand the meaning right away, but the feeling that the world had suddenly become a little lighter warmed her rain-soaked heart. The woman gathered her courage and lifted the phone again. Her son's name blinked on the screen. Anxiety still raged in her heart, but now it was mixed with determination. She pressed the call button and heard the ringing. "Hello?" His voice again, a little warmer than before. "Hi, I want to talk," she said, her voice trembling but her intention firm. Silence hung on the other end. She gripped the phone, inhaled deeply, and tried to speak out everything she hadn't been able to say for years. The son was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Okay, I'm listening." The woman's heart froze. Each word was like a step across an icy bridge. One wrong move and the connection would break again. "I know that for many years I was wrong. I yelled, argued, and maybe broke a lot, but I want to fix at least something. I want you to know I truly regret it." On the other end, she heard quiet breathing. She understood that at last he was hearing her. "Mom, I don't know." His voice was weak, uncertain. The woman smiled through her tears. "You don't have to know everything right away. Just listen to me and let me explain." And she began to speak, recalling every moment that once brought only shame and pain. The words came slowly but steadily. The beggar watched silently as she opened her heart, as if a rusty lock was finally turning with the right key. The rain no longer seemed gray. It became part of this cleansing. On the other end came a breath, then a faint smile in his voice. "I'll try, we'll try," said the son. The woman closed her eyes and exhaled with relief. Inside, something broke and immediately healed. Fear gave way to hope. She looked at the beggar sitting in the rain and noticed for the first time that his eye was held neither pity nor judgment, only understanding. "Thank you," she said softly. Ease only nodded, and for a moment the world around them grew quieter. The woman stood in the rain, still holding the phone, and felt a strange calmness. The beggar looked at her, his eyes glowing with a soft, almost magical light. "You've done what many are afraid to do," he said quietly. "Not everyone is ready to face their own pain and act." She looked at him, truly for the first time, and gratitude entered her heart. "You changed me," she whispered. He gave a slight nod, and it seemed the whole street froze, letting through only the sound of rain and her quiet words. "Every person carries their own darkness," he continued, "but sometimes it takes an outside glance to see the light." The woman felt his words sink deep into her soul. "You are a gift for those who are lost," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. The beggar smiled. "I only help reveal what is already inside. The strength has always been yours." She nodded, realizing that the gift was not in his hands, but in her courage to accept help and act. The wind eased slightly, the rain slowed its fall. The woman took a deep breath. "I will go to him," she said. The beggar remained silent, knowing that everything now depended solely on her. "Remember," he added softly, "not every step is easy, but every step is a victory over fear." She looked at him one last time and nodded. His eyes held not only understanding but a quiet sadness. He was saying goodbye not to a person, but to a piece of a story he had helped change. She walked toward her son's house while he remained at the corner of the rainy street watching. He saw thousands of such stories every day, people losing and finding themselves, confronting the darkness and the light within. His gift was to see and act, to help those who were ready to accept. And though his own life was empty and cold, he understood. Every little spark he kindled made the world a little brighter. He lifted the cup of coins, nodded to himself, and waited for the next person. The woman's story had ended, but his path continued.